I have things I want to do, but what's available, what the universe wants to give me surpasses my vision of what's possible. So there are times when, if I can let go of my goal enough and be in receiving mode, what the universe gives me is going to be better than what I thought.
Welcome to the Success Sessions. My name is Jessie Johnson, and I am thrilled and just like in love with the person that I am talking to today. Ken Blackman has been a friend and a very important coach in my life. And it's actually kind of remarkable to be able to say both things actually about any human. Most of my friends are not coaches, and most of my coaches are, we love each other, but it's a different relationship. And so Ken is incredibly special. And I think actually part of his mastery is highlighted in the fact that he is so fluid and masterful in relationships that he's able to do both of those things with me. So Ken was the relationship coach that Shrikala and I hired at the turn of our tides when we'd been broken up. We were ready to try getting back together, but things were really rocky. And Ken literally helped us transform our whole relationship. Because of our work with Ken, we learned a tremendous amount about ourselves and ended up married quite happily. So Ken is one of the most brilliant humans and coaches that I've ever known and had the pleasure to work with. And I'm super honored that you're here, Ken. Thank you for your time.
It's such a joy. It's such a joy to join you on this.
When you were little, how did you define success and how were you wrong?
My answer is going to be so very different from the last time we talked about this. So when I was little, I think the last time that I answered this question, my answer was that I didn't really have a sense of what success was when I was a kid. I grew up in kind of a poverty situation. We were mostly happy human beings, but we didn't have a sense of material wealth and kind of a disregard and a disdain for material wealth, right? I mean, Berkeley, California in the 1960s and 70s. So very anti-establishment, very, radical left, But along with that was just a disdain for the idea of material wealth. And my mom mostly wanted us as kids to be happy. And that was kind of, if I had a definition of what success was at that time, it was whether we were happy or not. And that was super important to my mom, and I adopted that. And so after a very long trip of going to a lot of different places, I think in the last week or the last few weeks or the last months, I have readopted that as my measure. And so I want to tell a story about this. So in the last year, I was making more than I had made in the past, right? Like I had up-leveled my money. I had continued to up-level my money, and last year was no exception. And then towards the later part of last year, like fall and winter, I was starting to see that the numbers were imbalanced because I was super ambitious. I was pushing and investing and, all that stuff. Investing in myself, taking courses and spending. And I saw this shift coming where I was going to go negative. My numbers were going to shift and go negative at a time when I was overspending.
Earning.
That's right. At a time when I hadn't created a cushion for myself to handle that, right? Like I was going to hit a rough spot, and I started to get nervous. And so I started to cut back on my expenses, especially my business expenses. I started getting rid of, things that weren't paying off. And, but my income, while I was doing that, my income was dropping faster than I was expecting. Suddenly, old clients were finishing up, and it felt right that they were finishing up, and new clients weren't coming on board as fast as I was expecting. And I got into this cycle where the more I gripped and panicked and tried to cut back on my spending, the less money I was bringing in. And I could see this wall that I was like trying to put the brakes on before I smashed into this wall. And I got within a couple inches of the wall, like metaphorically speaking, like the wall was there. Like I was still going 50 miles an hour. And, you know, in slow motion, there was the wall. It's kind of like, you know, with Titanic, like you see minutes before the iceberg, you can see it, but the boat is so slow to turn, you can't do anything about it, right? That was the situation I felt myself in. And then one day, now I teach this stuff, so, but
well, and
still.
I've seen you teach it. Like you are no joke when it comes to I know that's not your focus in your work, but you are very masterful at teaching money, mindset, and sales and all of that.
So, you know, one day I just decided to feel differently. And I landed a bunch of clients all at the same time. I brought on like 4 new clients. Mind you, prior to that, my car was on sale. My car was for sale.
Because you were so like preparing for for not making more money.
The day that I landed a bunch of clients, what happened was I decided to feel good. I decided to feel right. And I decided to feel good. I decided to internally feel the way I wanted to feel in some other situation. And then the universe responded in such a way to you know. And the funny thing was that like pretty much the day that I got a bunch of clients, after weeks of my car being on the you know sales block, I got a bunch of offers on my car. And I had to chuckle, you know. It's funny because, you know, like, do you really still want to sell your car? And I was like, well, on the one hand, it would be nice to have that money in my hand. But on the other, if I say that this car is part of the life that I want to live, then selling the car does not improve my situation, even if it puts money in my hand. So I simply decided that no, I was going to keep the car because it's a part of the life that I'm creating, right? And so it was this place where I could see me doing all the things that I train people not to do, and then finally doing the thing that I train help people do within their own psyche. And it was so palpable. And so given that experience, I really can say that my measure of success is my internal state, because that determines my external state, right? So mom was right in a way, you know. And I remember being happy whether or not we had money. But I also remember growing up and having things naturally come my way and not stressing too much about what I had to do to make happen, right? Like to leave it in the hands of the universe to provide me with what I needed. And as I look back on my life, I've been more successful at that than I've been at taking the reins and making shit happen. I like that. I've had some success. I mean, you know, I'm no slouch, but I haven't had the kind of that's been harder for me, and I haven't had the kind of success that I've had by being chillax and knowing that things were right and that the right things would come. That I've actually had way more success in that realm than in the make it happen efforting realm. So
I mean, there's so many things that you're bringing up that I want to go deeper into. The first one is just I want to acknowledge and appreciate that I think that what you're describing now is part of why you have been such a gift in my life very personally, because I think I'm a little bit on the other side of the spectrum. Like I'm pretty good at like fucking making shit happen right now, you know, and like using that almost pressurized or adrenalized state to go somewhere. And I'm super grateful that I have had that fuel supply, but it actually is not, it's not super enjoyable to live from that place. And as I've used that fuel supply more and more, what I've found in lots of areas, like as a school teacher, as a math coach, in my own business, it's not that sustainable. So it's been very important for me to have models in my life who were doing something different. And you were one of those people. And you really, throughout our work together, both with me and with Shri, I witnessed you really holding that. Like there is a way for this to no compromise, which is what I teach. But you know, it's like the same thing that we're talking about. We all have our own blind spots. So you really helped me uncover more about that. As I'm reflecting on it, can we go to one of our edges?
Yeah.
This isn't really our edge. This is an edge for society, but I want, because I'm interested in connecting the dots between what you're talking about in terms of your own emotional state, your relationship to your goals and money in particular, and orgasmic meditation and the way that you approach this sort of stroke.
Can you phrase it as a question so I
think
know where we're going?
The general question is like, what's the connection there? How does orgasmic meditation and your tremendous mastery in that context relate to this or teach you about this?
Got it.
and I mean, I have heard you talking about these two simultaneous kind of like it's a seeming contradiction that's not actually, so that I am kind of leaning
okay
there.
Great. Yeah, there is a lot to say there, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So orgasmic meditation does involve genital contact, but the way it's taught, we say that it's not sex, that it's not sexual. And the reason there's a reason why we say that. The reason why we say that is because there's an experience that you can have that is so different from sex that if you go in with your predefined, all your, well-worn ideas about what sex is, if you go in, you will not be open to what is possible. And so by saying that it's not sex, all we're really saying is set aside your expectations about what's going to happen so that you can be open-minded about what will happen. And in the same sense, we say that it's not goal-oriented. And we kind of say that for the same reason, which is, if you go in with a goal, then all you can do is judge, did I get the goal or did I not get the goal? So there's this vast territory that you will discount because it wasn't the thing you wanted to happen. So if you go in without that goal, there's this vast territory that you discover, much of which is better than what you were aiming for. And so even if you achieved your goal, it's smaller than what the territory can deliver to you. And I deeply believe that this is how life works. That, I mean, I have goals, I have desires, I have things I want to do. But what's available, what the universe wants to give me, surpasses my vision of what's possible. So there are times when, if I can let go of my goal enough and be in receiving mode, what the universe gives me is going to be better than what I thought. And so this idea for me of like trying to get as much control as I can to get this particular thing to happen, even if I succeed, and this is the point that really needs to land, even if I succeed, I'm still missing out because what's possible surpasses even my small vision. So like that.
I want to go back to this moment, which I really appreciate you sharing, because I don't know any entrepreneur. Let's just be clear. Every small business owner and big business owner has had moments like what you're describing,
Yeah.
where you wake up and you're like, oh shit, I'm about to hit a wall.
Yeah.
I got to pivot. So that's part of being in business. I think that's really, I just want to highlight, because not everybody wants to go there. And I just want to really celebrate that you're willing to share that out the gate with everyone who's watching. It's so human.
Yeah. 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 And I also want to say, I know people who, in my situation, are good at powering through and, taking the reins and making something happen. I spent a lot of time trying to be one of those people and wasn't doing too successful at it. So this is another approach that also works, and it works really well. And I finally gave myself permission to be right about it. I'm not the only one who does it this other way. Like there's podcasts and YouTube videos that you can listen to, which actually was one of the things I was doing, was just listening to people who do it this other way. And I decided that I was going to do it that way. And when I realized that it was working, I realized that's always how it's worked better for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to say, like, you and Shri have been a contrast in this way. And I think it's part of why you guys are together. Like, each of you and I would have conversations when we would do our sessions, where I would describe Shri and I would describe you, and I would point out the difference between you two. And I would overtly say, I'm more like him. I do things more the way he does it. So that, number one, he could claim who he is and really like be the master that he is. And also so that you could witness that and see that it was a possibility. And he also could see what you were good at, and that was something where he could grow as well. So I think in you guys, the reason you guys do so well together, and maybe the reason you are together, is so that you can, you know, both benefit from each other's skills, but also grow in these ways, right? Build some muscles. So
Yeah.
it was really beautiful to witness.
I mean, I think I just want to share more about that, because I think that that's really significant. We did 2 9-month coaching programs with you as a couple. And in the first program, to be honest, I think in the first program, you were just like doing, we were in triage. Like, there was a lot of me freaking out about one thing or another, and you just coming in to kind of do this emergency support. That was a lot. And it was so easy for me to focus on what was negative and what was not working, and feel like there's a problem, we got to solve it. And you, to be honest, and I've shared this with lots of people, and I'm not, it's an important thing, I think, to acknowledge, that I really thought that we were hiring you so that you could help Shri. And what happened in that, like, I don't think I fully knew that, but that's really what I thought was going on, because I had tons of coaches at the time. So I was like, this is where Shri gets to get some support.
This dude needs to catch up with where I'm at.
That's right. And there was some truth to like him getting more support. I think that's real, but the truth is that first 9-month program, I feel like almost entirely was focused on you waking me up to all these ways that I was judging and manipulating and just unconscious, like fundamentally not taking personal responsibility for how I was showing up. And it just created so much space. It was so uncomfortable for me. I really didn't like it, but it was so important. And then in the second 9 months, I feel like we did much more. There was just more space for both of us to appreciate how we were different, and kind of turn up the volume on how we were different, and celebrate how we were different, and then come into more collaboration from that place of like, okay, Jesse can do this, Shri can do this. Let's put these pieces together and see how they play.
Yeah.
And then the most like shocking gift at the end of that program was really you being like, okay, and now how can you, this thing you just said, which is like, how can you become more well-rounded and actually claim your mastery in the area that the other one is masterful, and learn from the other person how they're masterful. And like, straight up, where you're lazy because the other person can do it, like, where can you take more ownership of doing that for yourself? And I mean, one of the things that I can celebrate with you now, it's been, we did that work with you at the end of 2019. So we're recording this April 15th, not even like a full 4 months in. We're doing pretty, like, it comes up regularly. We're like, oh yeah, okay, like more I can get better at that. Like that thing you're doing, like, I know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very, very powerful. And I it's remarkable to me as I talk to you now to just reflect on those kind of 3 phases almost of like, just waking up took a while for me, specifically in the relationship context. I'd done all this other work. I really thought I was like doing the work, but I had a major blind spot in the relationship. And so waking that up, and you were so, I can't recommend anyone more than I recommend you. You have my top stamp of like, whatever that stamp of approval is. You don't need that, but like, you have that. And then distinguishing that in the second program, and really like helping us claim these differences in such a masterful way that I was shocked that you were like, okay, and now switch role. And so anyway, you just like given us tool. We're so happy. I feel like we're one of the most joyful couples the planet has ever known. And we love each other tremendously, and we go deeper in love. And actually this piece that we're talking about in terms of prioritizing joy, that's really what he and I are leaning into and learning about together. It's like, where do we leave that? What happens that has us not prioritize that? Yeah. And that it's never at I think the old paradigm is that you have to choose. Like you can prioritize joy, or you can prioritize wealth, or you can prioritize joy, or you can prioritize success or ambition or whatever. And so much of my learning from you was about like both. It's not either or. What does that look like? What does it look like for Shri to get his needs met and Jessie to get her needs met at the same time? Like that, we could go down that rabbit hole too. Just like the relationship is not a competition.
Right. And can we also, along with all that, can we just celebrate the incredible, incredible growth that Shri, the blossoming that we've gotten to witness of this man? Yes. Like, he is in his element. He's in his power. He's like, he is the gift to the world that has always been in there. And now more and more people are getting to enjoy it and appreciate it and really benefit from it.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, it's so cool hearing you say it, because I'm like, me number one, like I get to live with this man. It's so satisfying. He's the best. He's the best. Forever grateful.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to like go back to how did you end up driving towards a wall? Like how, with the amount of mastery that you have, the tremendous skill set in all these different arenas, like how did it happen that you ended up in a situation where you weren't entirely in alignment?
Because I was really getting off on being a risk taker, and not all risks pay off. Mm-hmm. I was so accustomed to every single risk that I took paying off, because holy shit, my deities take good care of me. They have my back. So there's been a lot of times in my life where I took a risk and it paid off well. And I think what happened was that my deities just wanted me to be aware of the fact that doesn't always happen. It's not like there's no risk. I think they wanted me to know that they wanted me to feel what it feels like, to actually feel like there's risk, because I was acting like there was no such thing as risk. And I think that was an important lesson that I needed to learn, of what it feels like to really be facing the stark reality of a crash.
Why was that important?
Maybe so that I can really feel it when I'm talking to other people and not be so cavalier about their felt sense. I mean, I still believe that there's a way out when other people don't see it, just like I did.
Yep.
But I think I'll be a little less cavalier about what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I will say there's a different way that you can feel. And that may actually be the key to you getting out of this, is to the internal work to shift your internal state and how you feel. And you are capable of that. You are not a victim of your circumstances, in terms of you're not your feelings are not a victim of your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Your feelings determine your circumstances.
Mm.
But at least I'm not, but now I have a deeper felt sense of what they're feeling as I have that conversation with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting hearing you talk about it, because I actually, throughout this conversation, I feel like we're talking about really the heart of what inspires me the most, and why I'm doing these interviews, which is the integration of our spiritual transformational practices. And in the spiritual context, I like the idea. It feels very productive to believe that there is no risk, right? Like in the purely spiritual context, I think that's actually part of the teaching, part of the relief of spiritual work, is like we're taken care of all the time, we're sheltered all the time, God is real all the time, all that stuff. And the material world, which has a different set of contrast.
Right.
So I think it's my sense is that every single person kind of is negotiating the balance as they explore the full truth of both the material experience and the spiritual experience. And
Yeah.
you were really tapped in, tuned in, turned on to the spiritual truth. And this wall, it sounds like, kind of reconnected you to the integrated experience
Yeah.
of how to navigate both spiritual and material.
Very, very much so. Very much so. There's something else I want to say about this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to describe a realization that I had that might be familiar to you, or like something that we've talked about. I'll say it in my words, and then you see if it resonates with something you've experienced.
Great.
I discovered within myself a belief that disappointment was a source of power, and that I had to be disappointed in order to, like, that was somehow effective. And that in order to get to here, I had to be disappointed with this. And that somehow, like, when I kept going through my struggle and my discomfort and my negative emotions and all this stuff, at the bottom layer was, if I let go of this disappointment in what is, that is going to end up looking like me going slack.
Mm-hmm.
And that my disappointment is a source of power.
Hmm.
And what I had to confront was the opposite. Me getting off on what is telling the universe, bring it. Like, if I wasn't getting off on what is, the universe stops delivering me anymore. So the instant I got into a state of turn on and like really getting off on what is, that is the source of power that brings in my visions and my desires and more of the things I want. So it's not like I haven't taught this, but I apparently had to relearn it, like that happens to us coaches. Sometimes we have to relearn exactly the lesson that we teach.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, everyone's feeling it. I know it. That you're so real. You're so just. I do feel like the through line of my experience with you is that you're just no posturing. There's nothing between us. I feel like you're like, let's go, always, always. And
Yeah.
so just I love you.
I love you too. We
I
have mutual admiration society.
Yes, yes. I feel like there's something important for you to share about I'm sort of toying with a few things. Like I like hearing about your lineage and the way that your work around uh like what I think of as sexual edges and like researching these sexual edges connects to everything else we're talking about spiritually, wealth wise. I think I'm also like I also kind of want you to like shout out your expertise because I think it's really important and like talking about the connections between sex and money, pleasure and money.
Mm.
um there's just something in there I feel like we haven't gone as deep with as I want to. Can you take us there?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I don't know if this is the direction you want to go, but what comes to mind is um, in the same way that I don't know how this is going to land, but like we at some level we know the answer isn't actually money, and the more we attach to it being about money, the more we stay stuck.
Mm,
And that there's a way in which, yes, a bunch of money can flow in, but it doesn't mean what we think it does.
mm-hmm,
And as long as we have that attachment, it's not one of two things. It's not going to come in, or it's going to come in and we're going to discover that it's not making us happy.
mm,
Well, I learned that lesson twice. I learned it once. I learned it, I learned it in my the second chapter about money, but I learned it in the first chapter in my relationships with women because I had the same idea about what it meant to be with a woman. And so there was this period of time during which I misunderstood. I had this very two-dimensional idea of what a woman was, what a woman actually is. Very two-dimensional, in the same way that we can have a very two-dimensional idea about what money is.
mm,
And so I was just trying to figure out, like I didn't see another human being over there. I just saw a video game that like I'm going to learn the sequence of moves that gets me the goal. And the goal was a hot chick who has lots of sex with me, enjoys it, and adores me. That was like the thing I thought I was striving for.
mm,
Until I had plenty of that and had to confront that it wasn't actually the thing I was hungry for.
mm,
And that the actual underlying thing had to do with connection. Like I had to learn, it wasn't learning what women want. I had to learn something about myself and what I was actually hungry for. And once I did that, my relationships became deep and rich and intimate. And there was this closeness. And that was actually the nutrient I was hungry for. And then, you know, there was plenty of just like exquisite gourmet sex, but it didn't have the meaning. Like it wasn't the thing. It was a side effect of this inner shift that I had made. It
mm,
wasn't even figuring out women. It was figuring out myself, something about myself.
mm,
And once I figured that out, my relationships with women naturally became amazing.
I two things I want to reflect back. One is that as I'm listening to you, I just want to like put extra illumination or emphasis on how precise and articulate and nuanced your understanding of these dynamics specifically in relationship and sex
Mm.
are, and that the writing that you've done about this, even just following you on social, is so helpful.
Mm.
I don't know anyone that talks about it the way that you do. It's you're able to like penetrate right to the heart of these issues in a couple of sentences. And I mean, like from the beginning of our work together, just reading your Medium articles and stuff like that was like tectonic shifting in an instant. So I just want to shout that
Wow.
out immediately, that this thing that you're talking about, I feel like people can get deeper really quickly with you just by reading your writing, following you on social,
Mm.
following your blogs, and reading all the stuff that you've written. So
Well, thank you so much thank you. That
yeah,
means a lot to hear you say that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. And it's like it's helpful for me because I'm a in many ways product of culture and society, and there's a lot of programming that's in there around relationships that's not productive, but it's hard to see when I've fallen into those holes. And so just reading your writing is one of those like almost like going to scripture and you get a transmission, an energetic transmission of like, oh no, this is the truth. Oh right, okay.
Wow, that's high praise. I mean, thank you.
Yeah, it is high praise, and like you're right, and you deserve it. This is why you're here, Ken. I want everyone, if everyone in the world was reading what you write, the world would be a better place. And the second piece, I don't think I had like conceived of it until you articulated it. But that was a description also of my experience in the relationship work with you, was that I thought we were going to, at the extreme, fix Shri, at the medium, fix the relationship. And what actually happened, in particular in the beginning, and then we just built on it, never stopped, but it was like the emphasis in the beginning, was how I was showing up in a way that was creating something that I actively didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
I was actively creating something I didn't want.
Right.
And I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. And so I really needed that help. And
but the agency that you gained in recognizing that, right? Like the agency that you gained in being able to create the thing that you want, you know?
You posted something on Facebook recently. I think maybe you can remind me what you said, but basically it was like, right now, are you fantasizing about how this future partner of yours, this fantasy partner, is going to fulfill XYZ?
Yeah. Like, what current problems in your life, if you're single, what current problems in your life is your future partner the solution to? And in other words, what have you already made them? What are they already responsible for? And they haven't even met you yet. And if we can start to shift those things in your life, does that free something up with regard to your future partner?
So powerful. It's like, it's an inside job. The relationship with
totally
Shri is a reflection of my relationship with myself.
Yeah.
I mean, duh, but like, I totally wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
So I
had to, and I have to relearn all the same lessons about money that I originally learned, the same lessons I had to learn about how I relate, how my intimate relationships go. It's crazy, right? It's crazy.
What else are we here for anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I've already told people one thing that I think they should do, but what would you like people to do? How, if people want to go deeper with you, what's the best thing for them to do in your mind?
Visit my Medium publication, which we're going to put a link to. And then visit my website, which is kenblackman.com. Visit my publication first so you can see what the vibe is. And then, reach out to me if you want to start a conversation and see where it goes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your wisdom and contribution to my life very directly, Ken. And
oh man, I adore you.
I adore you. I don't know, we could just keep going on that.
Yeah.
After the recording is over. Thank you for your wisdom in this video, but also just in this time. I think your work is so important, and I'm so grateful that you're alive and on the planet in 2020 at the same time that I am doing what you're doing. I want as many people that you can have on your calendar to be taking up your time and learning from you. Your consciousness matters. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Likewise.
And all of y'all watching, let us know what lands with you. Add your comments and questions in here. If there's anything that I can do to connect you with Ken or get you more resources, just let us know. I read every single comment, and we'll make sure that you get what you need. So,
amen.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Be blessed.
Everything you want.